reasons.
On the job for Oregon.
Pacific Continental Bank, offering personalized business banking guidance to individuals and companies in Oregon. Pacific Continental.
Good evening, I'm Jim Lehrer. On the NewsHour tonight, Margaret Warner looks at the causes and effects of today's Federal Reserve interest rate hikes. Ray Suarez updates the Egypt air crash mystery. Gwen Eiffel, keyed to the Decatur, Illinois story, explores coping with student violence, and Elizabeth Farnsworth reports on the unexpected success of a musical group from Cuba. It all follows our summary of the news this Tuesday.
It took millions of years to create the world's oil supply and 150 years to deplete it. Who is helping to cut the world's need for oil with renewable energy sources?
This program is made possible in part by a grant from Travelers Insurance.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the annual financial support from viewers like you.
The Federal Reserve raised two key interest rates today. Both the federal funds rate on overnight loans and the discount rate to banks were up a quarter point. A statement said the action was taken to discourage inflation. We'll have more on the story later in the program tonight. Stocks typically head lower when rates are raised, but today they rallied on the news. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed up 171 points at 10,932. The NASDAQ index was also up 73 at 3293, another NASDAQ record. The Egypt air crash investigation will remain in the hands of the National Transportation Safety Board for now. That was the word late today from Chairman James Hall. The matter was expected to be turned over to the FBI for a criminal inquiry, but Hall said Egypt requested a delay. We'll have more on the story right after the news summary. President Clinton promised more U.S. aid to earthquake survivors in Turkey today. He visited a camp for some 9,000 people left homeless from the August quake that killed 17,000. The tent city was put up by U.S. Marines. It's about 45 miles from the epicenter of the latest earthquake, which struck last Friday. Nearly 600 people were killed then. Mr. Clinton said America would continue its assistance.
We in the United States will do everything we can to help you until your lives return to normal. And we will help those people in the area hit by the most recent earthquake. We will stay with you and work with you. And I just want to urge you to keep your spirits up, keep the smiles on your children's faces, keep helping the people who lost their loved ones in the earthquake, and know that together we will get through this to better days.
The president is in Turkey for a summit meeting with 50 world leaders on European security, which begins on Thursday. It will include talks with Russian President Yeltsin on the conflict in Chechnya. Back in this country, new versions of $5 and $10 bills were made public today. They will go into circulation next year. They have larger off-center portraits of Abraham Lincoln on the $5 bill and Alexander Hamilton on the 10. The larger portrait allows for more detail and for a watermark that makes the bills harder to counterfeit. There were more protests today in Decatur, Illinois over the expulsion of 6 black high school students. The Reverend Jesse Jackson and 4 others were arrested when they tried to enter a high school grounds. They had failed to convince officials to re-enroll the students, who were expelled for allegedly taking part in a fight at a football game in September. We'll have more on this story later in the program tonight. Hurricane Lenny took aim at Puerto Rico today. It was expected to hit there from the southwest tomorrow morning. The British and U.S. Virgin Islands were also under hurricane warnings. Lenny's winds were 100 miles an hour and expected to increase. Forecasters warned 16-foot waves and 15 inches of rain threaten coastal and low-lying areas. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now it's on to raising interest rates, an Egypt air update, student violence, and a musical success. Ray Suarez has our Egypt air update.
In just the past few minutes, James Hall of the National Transportation and Safety Board came to a much delayed briefing to talk to reporters about the state of the investigation into the crash of Egypt Air Flight 990. Time and again in his briefing, he talked about the sensitivities of the relationship between the Egyptian government, which owns Egypt Air, and its role in the investigation and its partnership with the National Transportation Safety Board.
For the National Transportation Safety Board to consult with these experts and officials to fully evaluate this information prior to any final decision on whether the responsibility for this investigation should transfer to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I met today with FBI Director Louis Freeh, and he fully concurs in this course of action. It is in the interest of all those concerned with this investigation and its results to ensure that this process, including any further evaluation, be done expeditiously.
Joining me now for a discussion, former FBI Assistant Director James Kallstrom. He led the FBI investigation of the crash of TWA Flight 800, and Elaine Shannon, correspondent for Time magazine, who covers terrorism and the FBI. James Kallstrom, what do you make of what you just saw?
I think it makes good sense. I don't see the need to rush into anything. We need to be sure of what's on that audio tape and how it syncs up with the data. We obviously need the full cooperation of the Egyptian government and law enforcement agencies, which we have a good relationship with. So I don't see the difference of waiting a few days. The FBI is going to do what they have been doing from the start of this catastrophe, and that won't change.
James Hall noted in the briefing that none of the available evidence has shown any mechanical or weather-related failure of this jet plane. Does that inflate, expand the importance of the Egyptians and their aid in this investigation?
Well, I think it just stands on its own. I look back at TWA 800, and we ended up proving a negative, although it looked at the beginning like it was a criminal act. So I say let the evidence fall where it might. Let's be careful. Let's be calculated. Let's remember this is an Egypt Air flight, although there was a lot of Americans on board and people from other countries. But I don't see where the delay hurts anything.
Elaine Shannon, for the last 24 hours, speculation has been swirling around this story. Word of what's been on the tape has been leaking like crazy. Do you think it was Egyptian sensitivities that might have caused the NTSB to slow down a little bit?
Absolutely, and they have every right to be sensitive. We wouldn't want people from any country or even some other region of the United States to be speculating on what people might be saying to each other in a local language. Two New Yorkers say some words to each other that people from abroad might say, oh my gosh, they talk to each other like that. That's awful. The FBI has a saying in the Justice Department, they call it the search for truth. It's not the search for culprits, it's the search for truth. If this keeps the Egyptians on board and the search for truth goes well, then that's what counts.
Well, what kind of aid on the ground in Egypt would you be looking for if you move to a next phase of the investigation, and it might involve American investigators on foreign soil?
Absolutely. The FBI cannot go door to door without the permission of Egyptian authorities, and they'll need those folks to find the families of the crew members, families of passengers that maybe need to be interviewed, to run databases, criminal databases, security databases, anybody with any connections to the several terrorist groups there. They'll need maybe medical records, they'll need telephone records, travel records, maybe apartment records. All of that stuff which was needed in the Africa bombings was done by the local authorities in Africa with the FBI input. But if the Egyptians don't let them walk around on their soil, they're not going to get anything. It's going to be like the Khobar Tower bombings and be delayed and delayed and delayed, and evidence will be third-hand and it won't be any good.
James Kallstrom, I'm sure a lot of people remember that hangar in Long Island where bit by bit TWA 880 was put back together. That doesn't seem to be a possibility in this case. Are we looking at flight data that ends up being paramount rather than just running in tandem with other physical evidence?
Well, you know, I really don't think we know at this point. I think once all the people that have a point of view on this evidence, this audio tape from the cockpit and the data recorder, once that's really looked at and there's some consensus on what the preponderance of that information says and what it means, then I think we can get on to the other issues. I'm sure there's plans being made to try to bring up pieces of the plane. It's going to be a real challenge from the standpoint of the depth of the water and the time of the year. Let's hope that this is going to be clarifying the information that's there now, and let's let everybody take a look at it and reach some consensus.
Elaine, do you think time is really critical, or are we sort of plateauing here?
Well, on the one hand, as Jim says, it would be really nice to get as much of that plane up as possible. But if we can't, the families, other people, the records in Egypt that need to be looked at, I think they'll be there for a while. And let's face it, these investigations take a long time. We in the media, we want instant solutions, but these guys want the truth, or they should.
And so after a while, we may move to less frequent briefings, but in fact, the more meat and potatoes part of the investigation?
Absolutely. I did a book with an FBI agent called No Heroes, and one of the chapters is called for a saying that they have at the FBI, which I'll clean up for television: assumption is the mother of foul-up. Never assume anything. Lead goes to lead goes to lead. It's a very slow, methodical, but ultimately, I think, the right process for this.
Well, we saw in the last day or so, James Kallstrom, theories being spun out about what things that may or may not have been said in the cockpit during the final moments of this crash. Is it dangerous to have a theory this early in the going? Do you end up sort of assembling the facts to fit the theory?
It's dangerous to have one theory. I think it's professional to have all theories and to look at all theories. You know, I just looked back at TWA Flight 800, and what the FBI did there was to try to have an open mind and look at everything. And we stayed a long time, but we were sure of our answer at the end, and I think that's the key to any good investigation.
So now we're looking at the long, hard slog part of this?
Well, I think we're looking for a process that's fair, that's open, that wants to get to the truth. As Elaine said, I agree with everything she said, and I suspect that's what we'll get. We live in a world today that's very small compared to what it was 3 or 4 decades ago. The FBI, through, I think, good vision and good planning, does have a very effective liaison capability around the world, including Egypt. So I think the good news is we will get to the bottom of this catastrophe.
And sensitivities being what they are in the United States, the last couple of times, as someone who covers the world of terrorism, there have been some real bonehead plays, some false calls, some running up down blind alleys when it comes to assumptions being made about connections with the Middle East.
That's right, and I think that's one reason that we don't have as good evidence as we'd like to see on the Khobar Towers bombing. Louis Freeh is very sensitive, I think, to these sensitivities, and he wants to get the information. So he doesn't want to look like he's grabbing the case away from the NTSB and insulting the Egyptians. That would be absolutely counterproductive and be disastrous for everybody, including him.
Elaine Shannon, good to talk to you. James Kallstrom, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Margaret Warner has the interest rate story.
Today's quarter-point interest rate hike is the third this year. In a statement explaining its decision, the Federal Reserve said, although cost pressures appear generally contained, risks to sustainable growth persist. The statement added that expansion of economic activity continues in excess of the economy's growth potential. Here to sort through today's decision are Bruce Steinberg, chief economist with Merrill Lynch, and William Cheney, chief economist with the John Hancock Mutual Life Insurance Company. Welcome, gentlemen. Mr. Steinberg, parse the Fed's statement for us. Why are they saying they're raising interest rates, and what are they trying to achieve?
What the Fed is really worried about is that we're on the verge of running out of warm bodies. That is, our unemployment rate is so low that they're worried there's no one left to hire anymore, and that this could eventually lead to some inflation pressures down the road. At the same time, they recognize that the performance of our economy has been outstanding, that there is no inflation at present in the economy, and we probably don't have to slow the economy very much to bring it into line with what they probably want to see it doing.
Mr. Cheney, what would you add to that?
Well, I think what I would like to add is that it's strange that they would choose this particular moment, this particular level of unemployment, let's say, to decide that we're running out of warm bodies.
But you do agree that that's what they're saying?
I do indeed agree that that's what they're saying.
But go ahead. But you think it's the wrong conclusion?
I think it's not an entirely unwarranted conclusion, but there's no particular basis for choosing this particular moment. Alan Greenspan has probably been one of the greatest benefactors to the American people over the last few years in letting the unemployment rate go down lower than anybody, including myself, thought was reasonable over the last few years. We probably have sort of 4 or 5 million more people in jobs because of that. I don't see any specific reason now to pick this moment to try and throttle back.
Mr. Steinberg, what would you say to that?
Well, the Fed, as a central bank, Alan Greenspan and his colleagues have really been radical in the experiment that they've been willing to run in the U.S. They have let our economy run full throttle, and I think they have made the right decisions there. But they are concerned that there are limits that we have to be careful in exceeding. I think in terms of the timing of this move, there was another consideration. The Fed is certainly not going to be able to do anything next month, right ahead of the change to the millennium, the Y2K issue. And they probably felt that if they didn't act now, they were not going to be able to act for at least a couple of months, and maybe a little longer than that. They wanted to finish reversing the 3 easing moves they made in 1997 and 1998 when the world economy was in a big crisis. They've taken back all of those easings, so this has a certain symmetry to it in terms of where they're headed. I think another consideration for the Fed is that while they're not targeting the stock market, and indeed the stock market reacted quite positively to their move today, they're probably concerned that if they didn't do anything, the market might run away with itself, and they would be fearful that that would stimulate the economy some more, which they don't want to see happen right now.
Mr. Cheney, how do you explain the market's reaction today? Record highs again on the NASDAQ and S&P, the Dow up 171 points.
Yes, it is, by normal standards, it is a little paradoxical. I think it goes along with the sentiment that this is probably the last move for a while. I think it goes along with all the indications that the economy is in fact growing at a sustainable pace, and the Fed's statement that they're now going to what they call a symmetric directive, which means that other things being equal, they don't see any need to raise rates anymore unless there's new evidence.
So sort of a sigh of relief in a way.
Exactly.
So what effect, staying with you, Mr. Cheney, what effect do you think this will have on economic growth? I mean, the Fed did say that they thought economic growth was proceeding at a pace that essentially couldn't be sustained without inflation. Is this quarter point, maybe taken with the other two, enough to put a lid on without depressing it too much?
This quarter point is not by itself going to make a big difference, but it's going to make a little difference. I mean, that's why they do it. And it is going to slow it a little bit more than the accumulated effect of the last couple of tightenings. I guess the big question here is whether the economy needs to slow any more than it is already doing. The Fed stated as a fact that the economy is now growing faster than its potential. And I think that is really the crux of the argument, is whether the recent improvements in productivity growth, which raise the potential, and recent signs of a little bit of a slowdown in a couple of sectors may add up to, in fact, it's already done what it needs to do. It's already growing at a slightly slower and now sustainable pace.
Do I take it then that you are a proponent of the proposition that we are in a new economy or a new economic era in which we can have greater economic growth without inflation?
I think everybody at this point would agree that we can have some more economic growth without inflation. And I don't think any reasonable person would argue that we can have unlimited growth. So really the issue is calibrating your model. And my argument with the Fed at this point would be that the old model has broken down.
The old model of business cycles and so on.
Well, the old model would say that we get inflation when the unemployment rate drops below 6%, which is what most of us believed a few years ago. That's clearly not true. There's some unemployment rate so low that we start to get wage inflation, but we're not there yet as far as one can tell from the evidence of wages.
Mr. Steinberg, where are you on this question of whether we're in a new economy, and where do you think the Fed is saying it is on that question?
Well, of course we're in a new economy. Anyone that doesn't believe we are is kind of willfully blind to the amazing things that have happened to the U.S. In the 1990s. This cycle is going to soon be the longest in history. Growth has been accelerating in the last few years. Inflation has been decelerating in the last few years. Productivity growth, which is the source of higher standard of living, has been increasing. So clearly our economy is functioning much better than it has ever functioned probably in our economic history. But the question for the Fed ultimately is, how much of a good thing can you have? Now, I actually believe that the economy has slowed to what I would estimate its growth potential is at this point. But the Fed is a little more cautious than I am, and it's actually their job to be a little more cautious than I am because they're a central bank. And for them, the growth potential of the economy is probably a little slower than it's going. But I think what's important to understand, it's probably not that much slower. I don't think the Fed wants to see the economy slow all that much. I think if it just slows a little more, it would be quite satisfied to leave things as they are.
And you pointed out that it lowered interest rates 3 times last year by a little bit and then raised them this year a little bit. Has this tweaking done, do you think, what the Fed wanted? In other words, do you think the Fed deserves a lot of credit for our economy's ability to continue to grow without inflation?
The Fed has been an amazing agent of making things really good. When they were easing policy, if they hadn't done that, the world might have found itself in a world depression. You remember financial markets a year ago, just over a year ago, were extremely disrupted. They really weren't functioning, and it was the Fed which kind of saved our bacon at that point. The response of the economy to the easings was perhaps a little more jet-propelled than they expected because things really took off quite rapidly. And I think that they've done a good enough job that they deserve the benefit of the doubt in terms of what they're doing right now. Now, if they stop where they are right now, the impact on the economy is going to be fairly slight, which is why the stock market actually went up today so much. The thought process being that, okay, this is probably it. That's what the market is thinking. But this isn't so bad. The economy will be able to keep on growing fairly strongly. Corporate earnings will keep on going up, and we'll have interest rate stability. So, and I think that's probably right. It's only if they kept on going after this point where I think we'd have to start worrying about what the outcomes would be.
All right. Well, Bruce Steinberg and William Cheney, thank you both very much.
Zero tolerance for school violence, and to Gwen Eiffel.
It all started as a ruckus between high school students at a September football game. But on home video, the fight looked more like a riot. Students were expelled, parents were outraged. That school fight has now become the backdrop for a national debate over rules, race, and zero tolerance. Decatur, Illinois is a small city of about 83,000, 3 hours southwest of Chicago.
Get out the way.
Today, civil rights activist Jesse Jackson literally stopped traffic there.
We were told that in Selma, Alabama, the knowledge of the right to vote was local. We were told in South Africa that the right to party was local. And so the local is in a state, in a nation. We respect the United States, and we will go at every level because we want due process and equal protection under the law for all of our citizens.
He was later arrested and led away in handcuffs after leading a protest against the expulsions. School officials have said all along they had no choice. Decatur school board policy dictated they expel 6 students involved in the fight. 4 were later charged with mob action, which is considered a felony.
This was not a simple fist fight. This truly was a major brawl. They had no conscience whatsoever regarding who they're going to run into or move out of the way.
Similar, if less heated disputes, are playing themselves out in schools across the country, where officials are taking decisive action to respond to violence and threats of violence within their walls. Last month, a Texas teenager spent 5 days in jail for writing a Halloween story.
How do you feel getting out of here, Chris?
Oh, wonderful.
The extra credit assignment described the shooting of 2 classmates and a teacher. And in Cleveland, Ohio, earlier this month, South High School's big homecoming weekend was ruined, and the school shut down.
We now have documents in our possession that seem to clearly indicate that there was planning underway for some sort of violent act.
Authorities arrested 4 students and suspended 11. citing evidence that the teenagers, all of them white, were plotting a racist attack at a predominantly black school. Tensions at the nation's schools have run especially high since last spring's Columbine High School shooting in Colorado. Early last month, a Columbine student was arrested for threatening to, quote, finish the job. It seems as if it's happening everywhere. In Prairie Grove, Arkansas, 5 junior high students who called themselves the Prep Killers were arrested. And in Oklahoma City last week, a 4-year-old took his parents' loaded pistol to school, thinking it was a toy. He was kicked out of school for a year. But a U.S. Department of Education report suggests that the problem may not actually be as bad as it seems. Overall, the report found school violence has declined. Zero-tolerance policies, however, are spreading. And if today's old-fashioned civil rights protest in Decatur is any guide, some parents are not willing to take that lying down. Now the perspectives of 4 educators with hands-on experience. 2 run public school systems in cities with a zero-tolerance policy. Rod Page is the superintendent for the Houston Independent School District, and Paul Vallis is the chief executive officer for the Chicago Public Schools. Joining them are Patrick Welsh, an English teacher at an Alexandria, Virginia high school, and Brenda Melton, a San Antonio guidance counselor. She works at an alternative school for problem students. Mr. Page, Houston has had a zero-tolerance program for about 4 or 5 years. Exactly what does that mean?
Our policy specifically outlines incidents of weapons. We're particularly concerned about that, and we have a zero-tolerance policy regarding weapons. When a student brings a weapon to school, the student is out of there. We expel the student. But we don't expel the student to the street. We expel the student to an alternative placement, an alternative school.
So assuming I am a B student, and I'm carrying a Swiss Army knife to use as a can opener, and I'm caught at this metal detector in the Houston Public Schools, what happens to me?
Well, first of all, you being a B student is irrelevant. The fact that you've got a weapon means that you violated our student code of conduct, and you're going to be dealt with for that purpose, for that incident.
Mr. Vallis, the same question to you. What would happen to me in your school system?
Well, very similar. You could be an A student or a B student. If you are in possession of a dangerous weapon, you can face expulsion. Now, all students who face expulsion are subject to or have the opportunity to go before a hearing officer who can then make a recommendation for something lesser than expulsion. So sometimes at that hearing, a principal can make an appeal that that a student be given a punishment less than expulsion. But you are facing expulsion if you are in possession of a dangerous weapon or if you commit any number of serious offenses, controlled substances, assault, arson, any number of offenses. And let me point out that our zero-tolerance policy is a 24-hour-a-day policy. So if you're arrested for a serious offense on Sunday, you'll be facing expulsion on Monday.
So even if I had no previous record or any previous effort in which any previous evidence that I've ever caused trouble before, the same thing would apply?
Well, you would face expulsion. One of the reasons that we have hearings and we have an independent objective hearing officer is to consider other cases, first-time offense, first-time nonviolent offense, is it a pocket knife, what was the intent? So sometimes hearing officers will recommend something less than expulsion. For example, they may recommend a detention, in-school detention, Saturday detention. But once again, there are certain offenses, and they're clearly enumerated. Everyone understands what those offenses are, and the failure to comply with the zero-tolerance policy will result in a student facing expulsion.
Mr. Welsh, you teach public school here in Virginia.
Right.
How serious is this problem of school violence?
It's totally overblown. It's beyond belief. Instead of worrying about, I don't worry about kids in school. School is the safest place during the day. We had 2 guys get off the bus recently and started a big fight in front of the principal, 5 feet from the principal and the cop. And the principal took them in and said, you know, why did you do this right in front of me? And he said, because I knew you'd break it up. I knew that if we were off on the streets, we might have gone the limit. Mm-hmm. And it's a constant thing. Some of it's parents who go to private schools and whether they feel guilty about sending their kids to private schools and not, you know, the limousine liberals. Everybody's blowing up the problem of school violence. And in my school, which is 45% African American and 23% white and the rest foreign born, there's just this image of the school as a violent place. And yet when you go into school, it's quiet. The halls are almost so quiet it's boring. We had a headmistress from a British school, the Ascot School, and she came to our school. She's a friend of my wife, and she was amazed at the order. And she said the schools in London or any British city were never as quiet as this.
Brenda Melton, you teach at an alternative school where presumably you're dealing with what's been ejected from the public school system. Is the problem as dire as we have heard?
Oh, actually, I'm a counselor at an alternative school in inner city San Antonio. Actually, we do have a number of referrals for violent offenders that are sent to our school for short or long-term placements. I don't see that the violence is that pervasive. I do see that what we're experiencing in the schools is a hysteria as a result of the number of violent episodes within the last 2 years, particularly Columbine. And
is it a justified hysteria?
May I respond to something on that?
Well, let me just ask you to finish that question. Is it a justified hysteria?
I think when you see the media showing Columbine pictures for over 30 days every day, you see that the parents become very concerned. 1 month after Columbine happened, there was a number of students who, it was rumored that there would be more violent episodes throughout the United States, in fact, in San Antonio. So there were a number of students and parents who kept their kids out of school that 1 month after, on that anniversary date. I think the hysteria is waning somewhat, but we're still seeing some episodes. For instance, I had a student who wore a trench coat to school. He'd been wearing that trench coat for 4 years. He's a senior. And because of the trench coat, some hysteria was created. He went upstairs and had a confrontation with an assistant principal. That ended up being a violent episode because he was confronted about wearing this trench coat. There's a number of changes that have come about as a result of this feeling within the school community. And I think sometimes what is seen happening is that we're treating some incidents differently than we did before Columbine.
Mr. Vallis, you wanted to respond?
Sure, absolutely. Let me make the point that we've had our zero tolerance policy 2 years before Columbine. In fact, since I've been superintendent, we've had our zero tolerance policy going on 4 years. Over the past 4 years since I've been superintendent, 100 students have been murdered in their communities. None in the schools, none on school grounds, but 100 kids killed in the street, most of them innocent bystanders, many of them victimized by gangs. Let me point out that 3 or 4 years ago, we confiscated close to 150, 160 weapons at the door every year. Last year, we confiscated 31. We used to have a lot of fights in the schools. There used to be a lot of vandalism in the schools. One of the reasons that our schools are safe and as safe as suburban and downstate schools is because we have not only extended day after school programs to keep kids off the street, but we also have a very tough disciplinary policy. We have a zero tolerance policy. But let me point out that our zero tolerance policy is clear. Everybody understands what it is. The parents do, the children do. It's posted on the boards, and the punishment fits the offense. In addition, when we expel no one to the street. We have contractual relationships with 29 privatized schools, and when students are expelled for whatever reason, those children are expelled to an alternative school. They are put in an alternative educational setting. But our zero tolerance policy has helped contribute to the safety that our children feel in the schools. But nevertheless, there are still dangerous neighborhoods out there. I had a 7-year-old, I had a 7th grader who was murdered yesterday in the evening in his neighborhood, who attends a public school that I went to 35 years ago. So the bottom line is we still have kids who have access to weapons, who live in very dangerous neighborhoods, and sometimes there is a risk that some of that activity is going to spill off into the schools. So
Mr.
our
Page,
zero tolerance policy helps ensure that our schools are safe and secure places.
Excuse me. Mr. Page, could you give us your experience? Have you also seen crime go down in your schools or violence go down?
Absolutely. Crime is down in the Houston Independent schools, and it's going down each year. And I think part of it has to do with the implementation of our zero tolerance policy. And I concur with Superintendent Vallis. We've been at this for a long time, and we're not just now waking up to understand that we've got to provide a safe learning environment for students and for our teachers and principals. This policy in the Houston Independent School District is at least a 6-year-old policy, and it has not been altered except for one alteration, which we redefined a weapon. It's specific for weapons. We have a zero tolerance with weapons. When a student comes to school with a weapon, the student can expect to be recommended for expulsion. This expulsion, like Chicago, is going to go to an alternative placement where the student will still have opportunity for instruction and still an opportunity to continue their studies. But they will be denied access to the regular classroom in the Houston Independent School District.
So, Mr. Walsh, I just wanted to follow up on that. What we're hearing from 2 urban school superintendents is that they were dealing with this problem before Columbine, as for lack of a better benchmark.
And so is my school, and I think it's the arrogance of a lot of suburban schools. The Columbine principal, for instance, saying what a wonderful school he had, but that guy seemed to be asleep. It's the urban schools where there was a lot of fear before, or a lot of, let's say, kind of racist perceptions that started zero tolerance and that started getting very strict on offenders. But I still think one of the things we got to talk about is when you separate a kid from school, especially a lot of the kids who get in trouble, they have nowhere to go. They have, the schools are the center of their lives. They have no structure at home, very often no parents, and they're in a school, they have structure, they have adults who care about them. And to separate them from the school, like in Decatur, unless they have weapons, is an outrage to me, to throw them on the street.
Mr. Page, I just wanted to let Mr. Welsh finish now.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Now you can speak up.
Okay, it is not accurate to say they have no place to go. When a student is expelled, they are expelled to an alternative placement. And this alternative placement is, in fact, a school. And the school has the basic courses that the student would get in the regular classroom setting. It's an alternative setting where the student has the type of assistance that they would need.
Brenda Melton, where do parents come in all of this?
Our parents are involved in our alternative program from the very inception. The first time that they walk into the building, they meet not only with the principal, the assistant principal, and myself as the counselor, but they do meet our staff as well. So there's a connection automatically. But we do, within our program, we have a comprehensive approach. Conflict resolution is taught. We have life skills, and most of our students are there for drug offenses, but certainly there's a number of other problems that go along with the drug offenses. But we look at the whole student, and we provide, number one, the education that they need. And what the students report is they like the small environment. They like the fact that the teachers have a connection to them and really care about them. A group of my girls the other day in a group counseling session said that, you know, when we raise our hand at the other school, nobody cares whether we raise our hand or not. They call on the good kids. So there's a perception that they're not wanted, that they aren't cared about, that the school doesn't connect to them, and that's what we've lost a lot of kids. There is some scientific evidence that the larger the school, the more incidents of violence will occur. And I think what we're seeing in larger school communities are some school within a school concepts that are beginning to bring about some closeness with students and staff.
Mr. Vallis, in the effort to find the correct answer to these questions, are some school districts running the danger of substituting policy for good judgment?
Now, you know, the issue in Decatur is not an issue of whether or not zero tolerance is a good policy. It's an issue of whether or not the policy is being fairly applied. It's an issue of whether or not the policy is even being communicated to everybody in the school so that they understand what that policy is, and so that the parents clearly understand, the pupils understand, the teachers, everyone understands what their policy is. And also it's an issue of whether or not you're just expelling kids to the street or you're placing them in some sort of educational alternative system. Like Houston, our policy is very clear, it's very concise. Everybody understands it. Everybody knows what it is. Parents, everybody, organizations, churches, religious institutions, everybody involved in the school knows what the policy is. Like Houston, our policy, the punishment fits the offense, and there is due process where you can go before a hearing officer. And finally, like Houston, when we expel no one to the street. We expel everyone to an alternative school.
Mr. Welsh?
You were talking about the Swiss Army knife. We've had at least one girl in our school who brought a box cutter to school. I mean, totally innocently. There was, I don't know whether it was her brothers or what. She was expelled under the zero tolerance policy.
Did she not know what the rules were?
I don't even know if she knew she had the box cutter.
Let me point out.
It was a girl from a foreign country, and a couple of school board members told me that it broke their heart to expel her, but they would not budge on the rule. Now, if you with the Swiss Army knife, it might be a little different.
I really have to make a point. Briefly. Very quickly. 2 years ago, we had someone bring a box cutter to one of our high schools, okay, maybe quite innocently, and then proceeded to get into a fight with another girl and proceeded to slash that girl. The girl needed something like 40 stitches. The bottom line is the policy is clear, it's concise, but we do not expel children to the street. We put them in alternative settings. But we need to be teaching our children, not only, obviously, we need to be preparing them academically for the world, but we also need to teach them very early on that there are consequences for misconduct. There's consequences for improper behavior. And we also owe it to the students in school who want to come to school and want to focus. We need for our students to know that the school is indeed a safe and secure place, and the zero tolerance policy helps ensure that.
Well, we're all out of time. We could talk about this all night, but I have to thank you all for joining us.
An unusual musical success story from Cuba, and to Elizabeth Farnsworth in San Francisco.
They are unlikely music megastars. Ibrahim Ferrer, 72 years old, until recently retired. Before that, a featured vocalist for big bands in Cuba.
Omara Portuondo.
Omara Portuondo, in her 60s, famous in Cuba after a long career as a leading singer, but not until now an international star.
Rubén González.
And Rubén González, 82 years old, a virtuoso pianist renowned among Cuban musicians, but not a big name elsewhere until now. Now Ferrer, Portuondo, and González are hot, with hit CDs and sold-out concerts, like this one recently at the Paramount Theater in Oakland, California. Tickets for this event, which was part of the San Francisco Jazz Festival, sold out within hours. Reviewers raved. The San Francisco Chronicle critic wrote, "Saturday's show proved these musicians aren't just quaint memories of a romantic yesterday. The depth of talent in this extended group is extraordinary." The musician's success story began long ago, but this feature-length documentary, Buena Vista Social Club, which came out last summer, catapulted them to new fame.
From Wim Wenders, director of Wings of Desire in Paris, Texas, comes the story of an American musician who went searching for the sounds of an island and discovered the soul of a people.
American guitarist Ry Cooder went to Cuba in 1996, seeking some of the veteran performers who had played the clubs and casinos that made pre-revolutionary Havana one of the great music capitals of the world.
Los nardos y las rosas, las blancas azucenas.
With help from local Cubans, Cooder put together a group of musicians and produced several CDs, including the Grammy Award-winning Buena Vista Social Club album that has now sold 2 million copies worldwide. Some of the group, like Omara Portuondo, had never stopped performing. Others, like Ibrahim Ferrer, who spoke to us in Oakland, had retired.
Bueno, cuando me fueron a ver a la casa.
When they came to see me at my house, I was shining shoes. I was retired. I didn't need to shine shoes for money. I've always been a restless guy. You can ask my wife. I have to stay busy. I would play just by myself or with the dog or kids. I've always got to be doing something.
The musicians called themselves the Buena Vista Social Club after one of the few big pre-revolutionary Havana night spots that admitted black people. The film documents the recording sessions and a triumphant concert in New York's Carnegie Hall. Cooder had long been a fan of Cuban music, which combines Spanish melodies with African-derived rhythms, especially the boleros and the genre known as son.
I love the music because it is purely emotional.
And then it has a certain mysterious other side. The emotion we understand of tragedy, of joy, of all these things. It's very well expresses all these things. I think in the human beings and their lives and things, the Cubans have got that nailed.
Que están durmiendo los nardos y las azucenas. No quiero que sepan mis penas, porque si me ven llorando, morirán.
Bueno, el son cubano para mí es lo más grande.
For me, the Cuban song, the music I sing, is the greatest thing in the world. Without the song, without all music, but especially the song, life is nothing.
¿Y por qué? ¿Qué tiene el son?
It wakes you up, it makes your blood boil. With it, there is nothing dead. Everything is alive, and life, being really alive, is the best thing for all of us.
How does it feel to be standing in front of all those Americans, singing a song or a bolero, and you know that maybe half of them have never heard one, and they love it. They're responding so enthusiastically. How does it feel?
Bueno, yo en estos momentos, yo no sé ni explicarme.
Right now, I can't explain the way I feel, because I want people to understand what I'm trying to say with my music.
El mensaje mío con respecto a...
I don't know if I'm doing it well or not, but I think I'm doing it all right, because I see a lot of people in the audience with tears coming down from their eyes.
¿Por qué? Porque veo que se me quedan mucho mirando y personas que hasta delante de mí veo que se les salen las lágrimas. Es decir, de que...
I can't even explain it. It's something I feel, and the way that I feel it, that's how I give it back.
Y según la siento, así mismo pienso que la doy.
The great success that you've had, has it changed you in any way? ¿Se ha cambiado usted en alguna manera?
Bueno, hablando directamente, yo no he cambiado.
I haven't changed at all.
He cambiado.
Well, I've changed, but, I never thought I'd be as famous as I am now.
Nunca pensé tener una fama como...
But in other ways, I am the same person I ever was.
¿Y ha cambiado su vida? Por ejemplo, su domicilio, su ropa.
En ese aspecto sí, como...
My living situation is the only thing that's changed, but personally, my inner feelings, which are the most important thing, haven't changed at all.
Yo no quiero que las flores se van, los tormentos que me da la vida. Si supieras lo que estoy sufriendo.
Omar Portuondo has played a key role in Cuban music, integrating American jazz into the African and Spanish traditions already strong on the island. On a walk in Oakland before the concert, I asked what had changed in her life with her new fame.
Estamos tratando de, con lo que tenemos.
We're trying to use what we have to fix up our house. I live in the same house, but I've brightened it up a little bit.
I also asked whether the music she sings had just about died out in Cuba after the revolution in 1959.
No, there have always been people performing it, like Ruben and Cachao, the bass player. All these people who have kept playing. But the music has become more relevant and gotten more attention there now, for artistic reasons and because of the fame we got from the Grammy.
Though Ruben Gonzalez had never stopped performing, he had cut back due to arthritis and was practicing on friends' pianos. We found an old piano in a hotel near where he was staying in Oakland, and I asked him how he liked being so popular now.
It's like being at a party, something very happy, or something like I went to the store for candy. I'm enjoying myself that much. I see a piano, like right now, and I go like this. I have to check it out and see how it is.
The musicians of the Buena Vista Social Club have become celebrities. Ferrer drew an autograph-seeking crowd at the Oakland Cafe where he spoke to us. Ry Cooder has a theory about why the musicians have touched such a chord here.
When you're around them, or around these folks, what you begin to see is they have retained some humanity that's very out in front. It's very well worn, you know. This guy comes in this aura of humanity. He's his own person. His music comes from inside. It's from direct experience. It's not coming from a menu. He didn't buy it in the mall. So his culture has not been replaced as people outside in the rest of the world have often forfeited and given up their culture. They don't even know it.
Given the strong feelings in this country about Fidel Castro's Cuba, Ry Cooder, Ferrer, and the other musicians avoid most talk of politics. But politics occasionally intrude. These demonstrations in Miami late last month against another Cuban band, Los Van Van, got rough. And in response, the Buena Vista group canceled their Miami performance. And what the musicians can make from concerts and from CDs, which are bestsellers at this Virgin megastore in San Francisco, is limited by restrictions on U.S. trade with Cuba. Bill Martinez, a San Francisco attorney who represents the musicians, explained what kinds of payment the Cubans can legally get.
Well, the Cuban artists, under the embargo, which we abide by the rules and regulations, they are only entitled to their per diem, transportation and lodging for tours that they take on. They're also entitled to royalties that they get for CDs, but that's all.
The musician's success puzzles many Cubans, says Bay Area record producer Greg Landau, who has lived in Cuba. It's as if ragtime suddenly made a big comeback in the United States. But Cubans are paying attention, he says.
We went to the premiere of the Buena Vista Social Club in Havana, and it was packed. And I think people have responded also and come to reevaluate their own musical values by the success of Buena Vista Social Club. Cubans have in Cuba, because they see how much it's appreciated outside of Cuba. They've come to re-examine these same traditions and these same roots.
And so the Buena Vista Social Club musicians, late in their lives, are having an impact far beyond anything they ever dreamed. They say it's a dream they wish everyone could share.
And again, the major stories of this Tuesday: the Federal Reserve raised two key short-term interest rates, a quarter point, and federal officials, as we just heard, delayed turning over the Egypt air crash investigation to the FBI. Egypt was to provide more experts to evaluate the contents of the cockpit voice recorder before a final decision is made. An editor's note before we go tonight. Last Thursday, I said it was the last Veterans Day of the century. Wrong. I should have said it was the last one in a year beginning with 1900. We'll see you online and again here tomorrow evening. I'm Jim Lehrer. Thank you and good night.
Imagine a system that produces and distributes food and helps improve nutrition and health here and abroad. Who is building such a global network?
And by Solomon Smith Barney. Will you ever own a personal satellite? One thing's for sure, opportunities abound. Solomon Smith Barney. Success is earned.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the annual financial support from viewers like you. Video cassettes of the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer are available from PBS Video. Call 1-800-328-PBS-1.
This is PBS.
Funding for local broadcast of the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by viewers like you. And by the following.
SAFE Corporation, managing the human and financial cost of workplace injuries. SAFE Corporation, on the job for Oregon.
Pacific Continental Bank, offering personalized business banking guidance to individuals and companies in Oregon. Pacific Continental.
Next time on New York, the city revels in a gilded age.
There were no rules. All bets were off. You could do whatever you want.
And discovers that absolute power corrupts absolutely.
No American political figure has ever been quite as famous or as infamous as Boss Tweed.
Sunshine and Shadow, Part 3 of New York, a special presentation of the American experience.
On OPB, tonight at 9.
It's been an incredible 100 years in Oregon. Settlers carved civilization from wilderness, then tamed a mighty river. We watched a volcano explode and Rajneeshis take over a community. A local shoe company hit the big time, and a big baby won our hearts. We endured raging storms and floods and cheered world championship teamwork. OPB and the Oregon Historical Society invite you to look back at Oregon's memorable century.
Funding for this evening's programming on OPB has been provided by viewers like you and by Copper Mountain Trust, the Northwest's largest independent trust investment and advisory company, serving corporate retirement plan sponsors and individuals with complex financial needs.
Today, you have become teachers.